Team Canada has announced its 2018 Olympic men's hockey roster. I've got all the details, and that's coming up next. Everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. If you love unbiased hockey talk on all 31 NHL teams and international tournaments, then click that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned in the opener, Team Canada has completed their announcement of unveiling their full 25-man roster for the upcoming 2018 Olympic hockey tournament going on in Korea starting next month. So here's the full scoop on all the 25 guys named to the team. They've got a fair bit of former NHL experience, and they opted not to go with any of these CHL junior players that recently played for Canada at the World Junior Tournament. That did surprise me a little bit. I thought they might take a couple of those guys just to even out the amount of youth with experience, but I guess they decided to go more with experience. So here's what they went with. So in goal, we've got Kevin Poulin, former New York Islanders goaltender playing overseas currently. We got Ben Scrivens. Obviously, Scrivens has bounced around with a few NHL teams. He played with, I think, Toronto, Montreal. I think he played in Edmonton for a while. He's got a fair bit of NHL experience, and he was a bit of a journeyman goaltender, playing overseas recently as well, and doing pretty good from what I can see. The other third goaltender is Justin Peters. Justin Peters, I believe, was in the Hurricane system when he was in the NHL. So all three goalies are former NHL guys with a fair bit of experience under their belts. Most of the time that they spent in the NHL, they were backups. Take a look at their defense. Now, there's a lot of names on defense here that you might not recognize. Kind of depends on how closely you follow hockey. If you follow any of the European leagues, or you might recognize some of these guys maybe from their junior days, but there's not a whole lot of experience on the blue line from the NHL at least. So here we go. So we've got Stefan Elliott, Che Genoway, Cody Goluboff, Marc-Andre Gregani, Chris Lee. Now Chris Lee, I believe, did play in the NHL, the New York Islanders for a while. Maxim Lapierre, Matt Robinson, and Carl Stollery. So yeah, there's a lot of names there that I don't recognize, and I'm a huge hockey fan, and I've been following NHL hockey, junior hockey, and a lot of the leagues throughout North America, and a bit in the Europeans to a degree as well, for a long time, and there's not too many names there that I recognize. Now, a couple of these names I've become familiar with more recently, as I knew they represented Canada at some of the more recent international tournaments. However, I think their defense is probably going to be, has the potential to be, their weak link here as part of the team, just basing it on the fact that there's very, very little NHL experience back there. With the NHL not participating, they did say in a press conference that they had to search far and wide all over the globe looking for these guys, and they did consider over 100 players who have represented Canada in 7 international tournaments over the past year or so. So they had lots of guys to pick from. Unfortunately, there's just not much NHL experience in the back end. Now, taking a look at the forward group, you're probably going to recognize a lot of these guys. Most of them do have NHL experience, and a lot of them are currently playing over in Europe. There's some, a little bit from the AHL, but mostly overseas between the European leagues and the KHL. So let's take a look at their forward roster. This is all done alphabetically here. So we've got Rene Bourque. You probably remember Rene Bourque. He's played with various teams in the NHL. I think he played for at least 3 or 4 teams. I know he played for the Flames for a while, Montreal, just to name a couple. Gilbert Brulé, obviously he was a top prospect. Never really amounted to a whole lot in the NHL. He's been playing overseas for some time, but he was with the Oilers for a while. I believe he was with Columbus as well. But he had limited NHL experience, but he did play for a few years. He was a highly touted prospect, but never really turned out to be that top guy in the NHL like a lot of people thought he might be. Andrew Ebbett, Quentin Howden. Quentin Howden, you probably, if you watched the World Junior Tournament, you might remember him. He was represented Canada at that tournament not too long ago. It was only a few years ago. And his brother, Brett Howden, played for Team Canada this year at the most recent World Junior Tournament that just wrapped up. We've got some experience here. We've got Chris Kelly, currently playing with the Belleville Senators in the Ottawa Senators organization. Obviously, Chris Kelly has spent majority of his NHL career with the Senators organization, but he did have a stint of, I think it was 4 to 5 years playing with the Boston Bruins, where he won a Stanley Cup. So Chris Kelly is certainly a very experienced guy. Brings a lot of character, a lot of leadership qualities. He's pretty good on face-off still. Didn't get signed by Ottawa this year. He was a late sign. He went to camp with the Oilers on a professional tryout, and he hung around quite a bit there. Then they opted not to sign him. Then he ended up signing a tryout agreement with Ottawa to play for the Belleville Senators, and then since then he was loaned from Belleville to the Canadian team to play for the Spengler Cup. Now he's back with Belleville, and then he'll be loaned again back to Hockey Canada to represent Canada at the Olympics. Moving on, we've got Rob Klinkhammer. Klinkhammer also played briefly with the Ottawa Senators. He did play with a couple other teams as well. He did have limited success. I think the team he probably had the most success with was the Coyotes. I think he saw a little bit more NHL action there. But Klinkhammer was a very solid AHL guy, and every time he got the opportunity, he just never really made it stick at the NHL level. But he does have lots of AHL experience and done quite well at that level, and is currently playing over in Europe as well. Moving on, we've got Brandon Kozun. He was another guy, had a pretty good junior career, and most recently he did surface with the Toronto Maple Leafs briefly in the NHL. He had a lot of AHL experience that he did quite well with. Did get a brief opportunity with the Leafs, but never really stuck around, and has been playing over in Europe. He's a smaller forward, but he's pretty quick and has pretty good hands, and I think he's had pretty good success playing overseas. We got Maxim Lapierre. Most of you probably know that name, mostly from Montreal Canadian fame. Did end up playing, I believe, was the Vancouver Canucks as well for a while. Max is one of those types of players that you hate to play against. You like having him on your team, but sometimes he can get under even if he's on your team, sometimes he gets on your nerves for taking bad penalties, but a bit of an agitator kind of guy, but he can be a third, fourth line center. That's what he was most of his NHL career. Pretty decent on face-offs, and can play that the rougher game and the agitating style. So Max Lapierre is going for Team Canada. We've got Eric Odell. I mentioned Eric Odell in the other video we made about the Olympics, saying how he was being considered. I wasn't sure that he'd make the team, but he did end up making the cut. He most recently was part of the Senators organization, but he never played. I don't think he had. I can't recall him getting any NHL action, but he's had I believe it was a 2-year contract, mainly played in the AHL. He's another guy who had all kinds of success at the American Hockey League level and was never really able to get the opportunity to translate that to the NHL, but currently playing overseas and doing a little better, so he's earned an opportunity to be on Team Canada. We've also got Mason Raymond. Raymond's played with a few NHL teams, played with the Leafs, Flames, Canucks. He's got lightning speed, still a pretty good skater from what I can see. It does have an offensive upside as well. So Mason Raymond made Team Canada. We've got Derek Roy. Obviously Derek had a lot of NHL experience, probably one of the more experienced guys. Played a long time with the Buffalo Sabres. And then I believe it was the Dallas Stars that he went to when he left Buffalo. And then he's been playing over in Europe for the past couple of seasons. And Derek Roy will bring a lot of experience, and he's a pretty good offensive player. Pretty good speed as well. So Derek Roy is on Team Canada. We got Christian Thomas. Christian Thomas, I don't believe has really had much of any or maybe none at the NHL level, but has been mainly playing overseas. We got Linden Vey. Not overly familiar with Linden Vey, but I know he's been on Team Canada's radar. I've seen him in some of the other tournaments, but not a player that most of you would know from the NHL. But another name, the last name that you will probably remember if you've been around watching hockey long enough, is Wojtek Wolski. Wolski was he had a pretty decent actually start to his NHL career. He's another kind of player who had success and just wasn't able to sustain it long term. And he's been playing over in the KHL for a while now and actually done quite well. So there you have it. That's Team Canada's 2018 Olympic roster for the Pyeongchang Games over in South Korea. So I know we did a video back not too long ago discussing Team USA and the speculated roster for Team Canada. Obviously, some of these names that I mentioned today were names that I had mentioned in my other video that I speculated would likely make the team. Obviously, there's a few names that are different as well. So definitely leave some comments down below. Let me know what you think of this team, what you think of the tournament coming up. It's definitely going to be very different with no NHL guys. If you look at Canada's roster, just to compare it to the US, since they're big rivals, and definitely would have been both expected to do quite well with NHL guys. The US went with a little bit of a younger team. They definitely took some not too many, but they had some guys that are still at that US college level that would have competed in the World Juniors in the last couple of years. So I think the US overall team might be a little bit younger Canada ended up going with more experience. The average age is age 31, so they definitely have lots of playing experience. Mostly, obviously lots of pro experience, even though a lot of it, especially in the back end, is not NHL experience. Doesn't mean it's not good experience. And even though this roster might seem a little weird saying some of these names as Olympians, obviously without the NHL participating, certainly makes things a lot more difficult. We're not going to see the best players in the world. But what I want to hear from you is, do you expect this hockey tournament at the Olympics to be fun to watch, even though the NHL is not there? And do you think Canada did a good job naming their roster? Now, I know a lot of you out there watching are from Canada, so give me your thoughts down below. Don't forget to follow us on social media. You'll see our social media links starting right here with our Twitter handle on the screen. We also are on Facebook and Instagram. Those links are all in the description below, so certainly check those out and follow those accounts. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.